And welcome. My name is Matthew James, and I talk too much, or at least that's what everyone tells me. But today I'm going to take a second and shut up and let you guys listen to a guy named EposVox, or Adam, who how would you describe yourself? Would it be fair to call you a tech YouTuber?
Yeah, that's probably a fair definition. There's always so many words for influencer or YouTuber or whatever, but a
Hmm,
tech YouTuber is pretty much the easy way to go.
there we go. So I have known I've known EposVox for like 5 years now, like probably.
It's been a long time.
Like Yeah, I feel like I've definitely, even if we weren't like intimately familiar with each other, like I definitely knew of you for at least that long. Um and like one of the things, especially in the last few years, probably like 2 or 3, that I found incredibly inspiring about you was like your work ethic. One of the things I find incredibly interesting about any person is their work ethic. Like if somebody can stick to something and like really get into it and like get up every day and do what they're supposed to do for whatever it is that they're supposed to do, like that's incredibly interesting to me because like I think for everyone like it's pretty hard to do that, and most people they're like never mind, like I can't really be asked. But like one thing it seems to me from like the amount and the quality of your content uh is that like that cannot be possible for you, especially because you don't have somebody else editing your videos.
Right.
You know what I
I
mean?
mean, that's how it was with my like traditional jobs before I stopped doing those. That was exactly what got me so focused on making YouTube stuff was pretty much from day one, even back when I was just making like horrible stuff. Because I started making gaming videos and they were really bad. I was making some really bad stuff. I was making some awful choices, but I knew day in and day out, like I loved just doing this instead of doing anything else. And
Yeah.
it might be a bit of an unhealthy obsession, but I it's I wouldn't see doing anything else at this point.
Yeah, I completely understand that. But one of the things, like, I swear to God, like once a week, at least I'll watch an Epos Vox video, and I sit there and I'm like, how the fuck does he do this? Like, and I just wonder, like, I'm genuinely curious what a day in the life of Epos Vox is like. Like when do you get up? When do you go to bed? And like, what's going on in between?
Well, that is very fluid depending on what day it is.
Hmm.
So, like today, we're actually starting a new schedule because my fiance is starting graduate classes today. Today's our first day, and so I'm getting up early, which is going to keep me more productive. But I will wake up either at 7 a.m. to take my fiance to classes, or I will wake up if we don't have anywhere to go at like 11 a.m. because I stay up till like 2 a.m. no matter what time I wake up. So that's always fun. Um,
Damn.
and I, I'd like to pretend that every hour, every waking hour of the day is like super productivity go go mode. But the way that I have found to be able to be most productive is to have a good balance of just like mindless do nothing time. And it's not like a lot of it. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, I spend all my time doing nothing. But I will get up and I will just watch a few of my favorite YouTube channels for like an hour as I wake up because if I try to do work, then I'm gonna get kind of burnt out and frustrated because I'm too sleepy and need to wake up.
Yeah.
And so I make sure I start with something fun that's enjoyable. This was a strategy that I adapted when during like late high school and college was just, I hated getting up and actually having to go. And then during my first year of college, I wound up not going to a whole lot of classes and it was awful. And so I adapted the schedule of getting up like an hour or two earlier, which sucked at first, but that meant that I got to like put in some sessions on Halo or do
Yeah.
something like that and get me pumped. And then even if I hated going to class or whatever, I was there, I was awake, I was in the mood.
Right.
And then I will, there's always a bajillion emails and work things. Like a lot of my time is spent doing kind of business management stuff. I wish I could produce more content because so much is spent on the back end. But I will spend time going through comments, responding things. There's always good questions that come up, whether it be things I just need to clarify or future videos to work on. and then I'll start responding to emails, sponsors that I'm working with, review units I need to keep track of, things like that. And then usually by, let's say, lunchtime, that's usually when, if I'm going to record that day, I will finish up notes on a script and I will eat some lunch, get my eye bags from not looking like I'm a zombie, and go up. We have a 3-bedroom apartment, and so one room is actually dedicated to kind of a shooting space.
Okay.
And so I will go up there and just knock out however many scripts I can before I'm either just stumbling over my words too much or just feeling too low energy. And so that's how I'm able to actually keep up a lot of content, is if I script enough in advance, then I can just keep changing shirts and record them kind of back to back.
Right. Yeah, that's like, to your point earlier of the like waking up thing, because like I fucking hate waking up. Like it, like if I know I need to do something, like for example today I went to sleep at like 5.
Right.
But I knew I needed to get up and I needed to do the podcast because we scheduled the podcast to be at 10, which means like I'm not waking up at 10. Obviously, I'm gonna have to wake up at like 9:30 at the latest. So like that's what I set my alarm for. And even then,
Right.
I was already waking up too late because you started DMing me about like how we were doing this, which I should have realized I needed to set. Like I'm still working out the kinks. So
Right.
but like it's easy for me to get up and do something if I know I need to do something like immediately. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like if somebody tells me, like if one of my friends needs help moving or something early in the morning one day, then it didn't matter if I went to bed at 7 and they needed help at 8. Like I'm gonna be there
Right.
at like 8:15 or whatever, you know, like I'm gonna be there. But like it's the times where like your brain or my brain confuses that I don't like need to do something because it doesn't need to be done right now, that like I wake up and I can sit there for like 30 minutes doing literally nothing, staring at the ceiling. So, but like
And that is the power of overscheduling.
yeah, like I do get that though. Like when I feel like some of my most productive times, I get up and like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sit here for like an hour and watch like, I don't know, TV show or play a game or whatever it is, and then at 9 or whatever the time is, I set myself, I'm working. I'm
Right.
gonna work for however long, or I'm gonna get this like X amount of things done, and then after that I'll take another break. You know, like I've had to figure that out, especially with like starting college this year, was that like I didn't know how to study. You know, like so I've had to figure out how to study. Like my first semester I took 2 classes. I took a chemistry class and I took a business class. And like the business class I didn't have to study that much for because like I could get most of it in school. Chemistry, like I learned the hard way that I needed to study, you know. But I still didn't know how. But like this, over the summer I've been taking Chinese and I've studied more for this than I have for anything in my life. And like it's taught me how to study, which I've employed a lot of the same tactics that it sounds like you use to do that, and I found it to be pretty effective for me. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I always see all those things that are like, you need to make sure that you're getting up at 6 a.m. and exercising and then shower and go to work. And I'm just like, that's great if you have like a corporate job and you have a 9 to 5, but it just doesn't work if you're a night owl or you just like, if, I don't know, there's just certain personalities and everyone acts like that's like a universal rule, and it would never work for me.
Yeah, no, I don't think it would. Like I genuinely like one of the biggest things for me right now is like figuring out how to make like my podcast work, my little business work, or like something work, because like I seriously like can't imagine working like a real job. Like the only thing that like I can genuinely see myself doing at this point is like if I decide to get a marketing degree, because I actually do think marketing seems like a fun job.
Yeah.
Like it seems like a job that I probably wouldn't, you know, like be driving to work and think about like how many days off I'd get if I ran off the side of the road today, you know, like yeah, so like I think that's probably the only thing. But yeah, like I worked like this sounds really stupid, but like I worked one day in like 2016 because I had to choose between like getting a job, because I wasn't making any money at this point, and I had to choose between getting a job and like moving back home. Like if I didn't get a job, I was gonna have to move back home with my mom, and like totally makes sense, you know, like understandable. And then like I got this job. It was like a $15 an hour job where I'd just be like moving. I'm sorry, like I'd be like a courier essentially for a real estate company. Like I'd be moving signs back and forth to different houses, or moving like flyers and stuff like that to different houses for when they had open houses and whatnot. And
Right.
I worked this one day, and like it just so happened that my girlfriend had told her parents, I guess, you know, like obviously that like I did video stuff, and so her parents had asked me to make a reel for her brother. And so I was filming for the last couple weeks at that time, like for her brother's lacrosse games. And then like it just so happened to be that they needed the video like right then. So like the night before my first day of work, I sat there for like hours working on this video, and I made like two versions. One version that my friend who played lacrosse like thought was the better version, and like whatever, and then I made the version that I liked. And then the next day after work, my girlfriend came over, and then I showed her the two versions, and she liked my version. And I assumed it was probably because, you know, like she's my girlfriend. Probably had a little bit of a bias there. And so then I sent it over to her mom that night. And then before my girlfriend left that night, we checked my email again, and her mom had sent me an email that like I don't think I'll ever forget, because like at this point I was pretty sure her parents didn't, like, they obviously didn't believe me, and they preferred that they didn't have, like, her daughter wasn't dating
Right.
like an art kid or something like that. I think that's
Yeah.
the way they maybe saw or see me. And they saw that, like they saw the video that I made, and they were like, wait, like hold up, like you're pretty good at this thing, you know, like. And they were supposed to pay me like $100, because like I was willing to do it for free, but they just wanted to pay me.
Right.
But then they were like, you know what, 100 isn't enough, and they wanted to pay me more, and I was like, damn. And so then like that's when I knew I was like I gotta figure out a way to do this, you know.
Yeah.
So then I went into the job the next day and quit, and then failed for another year.
That's
So,
usually how it goes.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is. Like I'll figure it out, you know what I mean? Like it's a lot. Like the thing about like people like, you know, you and I, or whatever, is like there's nobody that can really tell you like how to succeed, you know.
Right.
Like as much as you can talk about like work ethic and everything, like that's obviously definitely important. And like I appreciate that, and like I like hope that I can make my work ethic and my drive stay as consistent as it seems you've made yours, because that's like my biggest issue at this particular moment. But I think I'm getting there. And then like at that point, like there's nothing that can stop you, as you've seen. I feel like you've seen, like there's like you have gone, like you've grown a lot in the last like 2 years since you like became full time, right?
Right.
Yeah, like before you're doing this, like the whole tech niche and everything like that, you were like, I don't know, like maybe like struggling on YouTube to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a really long history on YouTube, and it's one of those things where the past couple years have honestly shown me that like if you want something hard enough, hard's a weird adjective. If you want something enough, you will be able to make it happen. And to me, if people are able to make a whole lot of excuses of not fitting in schedule, I mean, obviously there's extenuating circumstances, but generally speaking, your average person, if they are not able to make extra time in on their passion, work, and come up with a way to pursue it, then you don't want it strong enough. And I have been on YouTube for literally half of my life at this point. I've been on since 2006, since I was 12 years old. And while obviously most of that wasn't productive time in terms of actually like building up an audience, and I've had like 3 different channels before my main one was really kind of what I focused on. But when I was in college, I was taking full-time course load.
Yeah.
I was working part-time jobs that frequently wanted to give me full-time hours without the benefits. And I was trying to run a YouTube channel. Now, it wasn't a full-time YouTube channel to the extent that I run it, but I was still trying to push it. And at one point, I even had a weekend internship at a radio station. Like, I had so much on my plate, but I wanted this enough that I was able to, you know, eventually figure out where the sacrifices needed to be made, where my energies were best put. And yeah.
Not to mention your your longtime girlfriend. You know, like a lot of people I
Right.
think make an excuse in that regard that, you know, like you can't you know what I mean? Like you don't want to you don't want to disregard your partner or whatever, but like you were able to do that and now you guys are engaged, you know? Like
Yeah.
so that's the thing. Like I definitely applaud that. I'm trying to get there personally. Like I think I'm like on the edge. So like I'm pretty happy with where it's going. But when did you decide, when and why did you decide to go full time? Because I feel like that's definitely like a hard cliff for most people to jump off.
Yeah. It mainly came from the fact that I was just unhappy with the jobs that I had, because I worked, I believe, 4-ish retail jobs through college before I quit my last one for YouTube.
Right.
I got fired from a couple due to stupid things that I did. But I was just generally unhappy. I got to the point like, and I finally got to one. My last one was I was actually doing tech support. I was working on computers. I was repairing them at Staples. And so that was at least in my interest. And so I had a little more fun with that. But I was getting to the point where I really didn't want to be there. And I was having like anxiety attacks about having to go. Like my energies just really weren't there. I did not want to go. There was just so much like mentally, and it is a mental thing, and it's something, you know, if I was desperate, I would have, you know, if I needed the money and didn't have another option, I would have stayed. I would have been fine. I would have gotten over it. But when I had some flexibility, it was to the point where this wasn't what I wanted to pursue. And so I happened to have started working with a YouTube MCN network back, you know, back then they were more important. Nowadays, they're not super important, but
Yeah.
I had just started to like kind of do some work for them. And I managed to convince them. I was like, hey, I am doing X, Y, and Z for you. And I had started to show success with what I was doing in the background, running a channel focused on a niche topic. I was like, I am doing well. I need a slight, you know, I need a pay bump so I can keep focusing on this full time, because otherwise I basically need to stop.
Right.
And they agreed to it. And as soon as I waited like a month to get my first actual payment to make sure it was legit and it was going to happen. And literally, like, I got the payment through PayPal or whatever while I was in work. And so I walked up to my manager at the time and put in my 2 weeks like that minute. I was just like, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm not coming back. Or, you know, after 2 weeks, I'm not coming back. And it was good timing too, because literally like the last 2 days that I was supposed to be there, I wound up not going my last day, but they wound up switching managers. Like 4 other people just up and quit. Like,
Damn.
it was good timing, but it was a buildup of knowing that what I was doing wasn't contributing to my goals of what I actually cared about doing, and the fact that I had been working so much in the background to establish something that I could actually chase, that I just happened to get lucky enough that I had some income coming in from it to supplement it.
Yeah. That's I completely forgot well, I forgot what the name of that network was too. But I remember that now that you mention it, when you worked for the company.
Right. And so that was actually technically 4 years ago, not 2, but I considered myself at that point to be a full-time YouTuber, since I was still doing YouTube work.
Yeah.
You know, I was still working for someone else on a contract basis, but I was still like managing YouTube channels, making YouTube content. That was my passion.
Yeah.
And so that was my first step towards full-time. And then roughly 2 years or maybe 3 years following that, lots of bad stuff happened with the network. Networks are no longer like actually super relevant anymore. And I was building up to a point where I had a couple big sponsorships with my main channel, and I had finally, like, when I quit my retail job to work with the network, I was still not sure what my content was. And while I was with the network, I locked in on tech content being my focus. I had made a lot of super specific content that actually took off in 2015. And so by spring 2017 or 2016, I knew like that was my focus. And so through 2016, I transitioned to 100% full time. And I still did some contract like course building work for the network through 2016. But then in 2017, I completely cut ties altogether. And I mean, this is what I always wanted to do. Like back in 2009,
Yeah.
my dream job was working at the machinima offices, making YouTube content with the Hutches and the C-Nanners and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it's a moving goalpost because this market is always changing and the definitions of success and of what I even want to do is constantly changing, but the core principle is still kind of there.
Yeah, for sure. Like for I mean, I even like I don't know if this I feel like the same way with me. Like even though like I don't really like I stopped being as much into like YouTube and like more into like something that quite frankly is like going to be less lucrative. Like if I had just stayed making injustice videos and like comic book video game related videos, you know, I'd have quite a bit more money in my bank account right now.
Right.
If the other channels who were my, you know, my brothers in arms at that time are any you know, indication of that. Like they're all doing pretty well for themselves. Like they're all like I think like 3 to 500,000 subscribers at this point.
Right.
And we were all at the same amount of subscribers when Injustice dropped, and I just like basically what I found out. This is another incredibly narcissistic thing. We were talking about something similar before the show started, but like essentially the day that Injustice came out, I started getting comments on my videos that said, "Well, the game's out. Time to unsubscribe," and that hurt my little 14-year-old ego. You know, like I was not appreciating that at all.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing my views decline, and then I tried to make new stuff, and I'd see it like it wouldn't do as well, and that was like also extremely difficult for me. Like the thing is, like I was a 14-year-old, or like yeah, I'm pretty sure I was 14, maybe something like that. I was like maybe 16. Like I was
Right.
not old enough to be in a position to like understand the nuances of what I was about to like the decision I was about to make and its ramifications on the rest of my life. You know, like I just
Right.
wasn't in that position. So, so yeah, like in some way, like in hindsight, like I'd probably like if I could go back in time, I might be like, hey, suck it up, Buttercup. You're gonna make these videos and you're gonna like it, you know, because you're gonna end up making thousands of dollars every month. But like instead, like I was like, you know, like, I was gonna get my license in like 6 months or something like that, and I wanted to make videos for the comic book store. Like I figured I could probably get paid to do that, and so eventually I got my license, got my car, and then I went to the comic book store, and like pretty much immediately I was like, "Yo, like I can make your YouTube videos better," and they were like, "Oh really? Well, come down Tuesday. That's when we film, and we'll fucking see about that." So I came, brought my camera, and like I think for the first like month or something, they essentially just had me record like using their phone, which is what they were like. They essentially just turned me into their cameraman for the first month,
Right.
and like I wasn't editing or anything. Like I literally was just being their tripod for all intents and purposes. And then I was like, all right, like I said, I can make your videos better. Like I'm not making your videos any better by sitting here being your tripod, you know. Like, and
Just
they're like,
standing there, man. It's not any better.
yeah, I was like the video hasn't changed, man. Like I don't know if you noticed. So then I was like, all right, you know, I brought my camera as I have for the last month. I brought my tripod and everything. Like let me try to make the video. So they still like weren't willing to let me make the video that they were doing. I think like the first thing they did was just let me make a video by myself with the Troy, the guy who works at the comic book store. And so made a video with him, and then they were like, "Oh, like this is like not that bad," you know. And then so then I think I picked up the work for the other thing as well, which is basically they'd show you all the comic books that came out that week. And then I wasn't getting paid, but I was supposed to be getting a 50% discount. Well,
Right.
I don't think you're gonna believe this, Adam, but they took advantage of me as a 16-year-old.
Oh no.
Would you believe it?
No way.
So yeah, it turns out I found out this on like Free Comic Book Day, like the following year, that I was getting like 25% off, while the other guy who worked for them, like on their YouTube shit, was getting 50% off, and
Of course.
you know I took great umbrage with that, so I like walked out and like just didn't come back. I said
Oh,
fuck
wow.
that. And then like 6 months went by after that or something like that. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'd like to make money. And so I went to the other comic book store and I was like, hey, like I'll make your YouTube videos. You guys, you know, give me a small sum. And then the guy who worked with me at the first comic book store ended up weaseling his way into that deal. So we ended up getting split 765 a month in half. So I'd get 360 something and he got 360 something.
Right.
And that was pretty cool. Like then almost immediately after, I also got work, like actual paid work from the other comic book store, which is the first one I worked at. And that I didn't have to split with anyone. So I was getting like a pretty good amount of money for doing something that I liked doing. And,
Right.
you know, I got pretty cocky and whatnot. And very quickly after, like, because it's so frustrating, man. Because, like, the guy who weaseled his way into that deal, like, because he was older and everything, they trusted him more. And he started, like, he was the one dealing with what we were going to be making. But, you know, he didn't know how to make good content. And, like, not to say that I know how to make incredibly good content, but I sure as hell had a better idea than this guy. You know, like, at least I had a channel that had some success. Well, he runs that channel into the ground, obviously. And so they're like, yeah, we're not going to pay you guys anymore. And I was like, you know, that's fair. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just frustrating, though, because it happened to be the exact time. Like, they basically, like, I got control over the channel. And that month, they also said, like, fuck off, we're done. And I think if I had been given, like, 3 months to make that show work, or, like, 6 months, or, like, a month, maybe that thing would have. Yeah, like, if I had been given an amount of time, that might have worked out. And then the other situation is, like, the other guy who was paying me at the other comic book store, like, his son died randomly, which, like, I can't walk into that store and ask him with a straight face to pay me money for videos when his son's just, you know, died. Like, that's
right.
Like, I can't even imagine that. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with this, but you know, that tends to happen with podcasts, I guess. So what are some of your favorite things about YouTube currently as a platform, and some of your biggest issues with it?
Ooh. My favorite things at the moment, everyone wants to disagree with me because it's super popular to just like trash all over YouTube as much as possible. But my favorite thing is honestly seeing how easy it is for good content to get out there in 2018. And not even my own, because sometimes it doesn't even happen with my own. It's not even on that level. But like, I have met so many people who have started YouTube over the past year to like 18 months who are already at like 50,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And it's not like viral random Jake Pauley events. It is people who just happen to make good content from day one, which I certainly never did. And target the right kind of audiences, and the new recommendation system just brings so many people up, and you get to see like much more genuine personalities get decent growth, and it's just really exciting to see. And those recommendations have helped get a lot of my views, you know, on a right track as well.
Yeah, like even with the Secret Podcast, like I'd agree with you. Like there's no reason for our podcast to be able to grow. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like the thumbnail. Like, I don't know how to make a good thumbnail for a 3-hour podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, I don't know how to make a good title for a 3-hour podcast. Like, if I title the podcast one thing, well, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here and say we didn't talk about that for more than 20 minutes. You know what I mean? So, like, if somebody goes and they actually search this specific thing, whatever it was, like let's say Ant-Man or something, and we talk about Ant-Man for 10 minutes, like, you know, they might find that was more frustrating for them than if I titled it 3 separate things, which are more indicative of the entire episode. So it's titling and like thumbnailing and everything, like marketing the Secret Podcast is really something that I've found is hard. But like, you know, we have 1,000 subscribers for that show, and we get between 1,500 and 2,000 some views within like 2 weeks or a month or something. So I feel like, you know, YouTube's not fucking us the way that some people might say.
Right.
So,
and overall, just I guess just that it's so accessible. Like in a time when everyone's hoping for a YouTube competitor, and there have been like dozens, but no one knows about them or cares about them on a mainstream level. Like we're reaching a point where YouTube and Twitch, with the whole Fortnite shenanigans, like these platforms are so mainstream, like everyone knows to go watch content there. And even, you know, there's some negative consequences of it, but YouTube TV being a thing, like that's a real thing that people are going to, like normal people might consider subscribing to for their TV service because it's like affordable and competitive. That brings more eyes over to normal YouTube content. And that just excites me to no end because while there's always negative consequences of like mainstream and corporatizing things, it's more people to appreciate content than we ever had when I started out. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
one channel can have more viewers on like a single video in 2018 than we would have ever had on the entire platform in 2008.
Yeah.
And as far as issues, I mean, my big thing is honestly the communication. Like,
sure.
there's frustrations with how they change some of the policies and this and that, but like those come and go, those adapt. We've had the same, we've had issues come up. Again, I've been on the platform for 12 years. These things come and go. Monetization is still way more lax than it was when I started monetizing, but YouTube doesn't communicate anything, and that creates a constant state of frustration for the average YouTuber or people who get mad on Twitter because they just don't communicate well. And when they do, it honestly makes things worse because they don't do it like publicly. Like the whole, what was it? The little randomized thumbnails thing. And while they had an unofficial channel, which is completely unofficial and not super promoted, talk about it, they didn't put a little notification in the dashboard or whatever. They just had a support tweet that got noticed and retweeted a bunch. That doesn't count as communication. Like, that's not.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah, and I understand the reasons behind it, and usually I'm up and defending them to a degree because they are a massive freaking company, and there's so much that goes into like legal stuff of PR. Like, I'm pretty sure at this point there is some legal barrier that prevents them from admitting fault when their algorithms are not working, or like the subfeed or something is not working, because that is a failure to deliver a service, and they could probably be sued over that. So they literally probably cannot admit that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I understand there's so many barriers there, but they just need to have ever so slightly more communication, and that would have smoothed over so many problems that they have had.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think I definitely agree with you. Like, the communication thing is definitely my biggest issue with YouTube, because it's just like I wouldn't even have an issue with some of like the boneheaded things that, or like things that come off boneheaded to me, if it weren't for the fact
they just
that like
told us they were doing it.
Yeah, if it's like if I knew that you were brain dead, then I wouldn't be as
Right.
mad at you when you acted like it. Like that's how it works. But I feel like one of my favorite things, not necessarily about the platform generally, but about like influencers and like our potential now, is that like, and this is something I've seen with the podcast, with the Seer podcast, is that like it doesn't like it. You don't need to be that big anymore in order
Right.
to like have something that is lucrative, like and is like worth your time. Like with the Secret Podcast, like we've been doing it for almost 2 years now, and like if you look at most people's YouTube channels that go on for 2 years and are consistent, like you haven't actually seen that much success yet. And to be fair, the Secret Podcast hasn't seen that much success yet. Like our biggest video has like 5,000 views. So, but because we have like this loyal like following, you have the potential to make money in other ways, like through either sponsorships. Like we have like small, not sponsorships, but I'm sorry, what affiliate
Affiliate
links and stuff like that we just call sponsorships because it's like easier to say. And then we also have our Patreon, which is nearing $500. And while $500 isn't that much,
it is for your size though.
Yeah, exactly.
That's more than I can.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like the potential there is like, if that continues to grow in tandem with our YouTube, then like potentially at like 2,500 or 5,000 subscribers or something like that in another year, like our rent is going to be paid,
right?
Like for each of us by the podcast, which is an incredible thing to think about for me, because it's a thing that while I do a decent bit of work for this podcast, like I'm sure you understand, like coming up with the right tags and coming up with the title and the thumbnail, and then like scheduling it or like uploading it and stuff like that. Also coming up with the topics, and then also the fact that we have to do like an extra episode of the podcast every week for the Patreons. We also have to do a commentary track every week, like, and once a month we have to sit in this Discord call, which isn't actually work to me, but like we have to sit in a Discord call with our $10 patrons for like 6 hours plus. Like there's a good bit of time that goes into this podcast. So the potential that one day it'll pay my rent while I'm like still getting through school or whatever is very, I like that idea. Like
absolutely. That was basically when I considered my quote unquote dreams to have come true, was when rent was paid.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I have been saying for a few years now that subscriber counts no longer really matter because you can build up a good community or even just get a lot of views with low subscriber channels and still have like healthy people that you talk to, and it works. I mean,
Yeah, you know, like it really does. And one of the things I've seen is because, and this is something I didn't see with my first adding into YouTube with Injustice and everything, is that like these people like really like us, like each of the podcast hosts, you know what I mean? Like I've started streaming. Like I basically said, if I'm going to waste my time playing a video game, I'm going to stream it now, because at least
right.
there's the potential that something can come from it. Whereas before I'd be wasting my time playing a video game and I'd just be like, there'd be literally no gain from it other than like technical skill in the video game. And I'm never going to go pro, so that's useless. So then I started streaming relatively consistently because I play video games probably every day, and I like started to see like a pretty severe amount of growth. Like right now, I was checking my thing just out of curiosity yesterday, and I'm like only a little bit away from being able to be like partnered by their standards. You
Right.
know, like I'm averaging like 50 viewers apparently right now, and that you need 75. So like while that's still like a decent bit of growth before I will get there, like it's crazy because I can play any game on Twitch. Like I'm not like stuck into some niche, which is what I was used to being with other with my previous channel. Like now
Right.
I can go on Twitch and I can stream Fortnite if I want to. The next day I could stream poker or something like that, and I'll probably get the same amount of viewers if I'm not streaming at a ridiculous time. And so like that's crazy because like it like that this community that's getting built like under me is like entirely based on this podcast that we do every week, that we started just one night because we were up too late and thought it'd be fun.
That's when the best projects get started.
Yeah, like we didn't even know what it was going to be called. Like we literally just like we're like, you guys want to do a podcast? And everyone was like, fuck it, dude. And just like we started recording, and like we were like, welcome to the podcast. we're your hosts. And so yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, not every channel or content type is something that's going to get like hundreds of thousands of or millions of subscribers, nor should it. And that doesn't mean that it's not successful. Like there's still this outdated view that unless you're on track to get that many, or you have that many, you're not successful yet. Like just having some and sustaining content, like a channel's only dead if you're not posting to it.
Exactly. I saw your I forgot what video it was recently, but I think it was your Q&A, and you said that, I think. And I was like, that's one of the best things I've ever heard when it comes to YouTube, because that's so true. Like I could still make dinosaurs come back if I wanted to. Like I just like
Right.
the only reason that channel's dead is because I choose not to upload to it.
Right.
So that's definitely interesting. How do you feel about like I know you do a lot of it, but how do you feel about sponsored content generally?
I think it needs to be done right. Oh.
My bad.
I think it needs to be done right, and disclosed properly. But on the whole, like so many people I feel have sticks up their butts about it. And it comes from, unfortunately, probably being burned by a lot of people doing it wrong. But unless we enter an ideal world where content is just magically funded out of nowhere anyway, like stuff has to be paid for. Where we're no longer in the 2010 2012 era of YouTube where everybody can do it while doing a full-time job just for free because they find it fun. Like so many of those channels have vanished at this point because they had to go do their full-time job.
Yeah.
There is you have to have bills paid, and ad revenue isn't going to do it. Ad revenue doesn't even cut it for like big websites at this point. Nevertheless, YouTube channels.
Yeah.
And so as long as it's tasteful and you can like the ideal goal is that you integrate it into your content in a way that makes sense. Like if you just do sponsored ad spots or whatever, that's fine. But in terms of like dedicated sponsored videos, it needs to be something that makes sense and adds value to your viewers. So for me, if I'm doing a dedicated video, it needs to be educational so that what I say in the video applies to everyone. Like, you can still learn something from it even if you're not buying whatever I'm supposed to be selling. And if you're an entertainment channel, it should still be just as entertaining or funny or whatever as your normal video. Just, by the way, buy Vonage or, whatever.
Yeah.
Make some outdated sponsored thing.
Yeah, I agree. Like I remember back when I don't know, probably like 2010, 2011, 2012, maybe somewhere around there, when sponsored videos like first started coming around, and everyone was still in like the money whore phase of YouTube. You know,
Right.
like people didn't get yet that these were careers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that was a thing yet. But like now I feel like it's ridiculous sometimes, like when I go into somebody's comments and I see, you know, that their video is sponsored by like Loot Box or whatever the hell, and everyone in the comments is like screaming money whore. It's like I'm sorry, like you have this confused with something else. But like for every single person with over probably like 100,000 subscribers, like this is probably their main source of income. You know what I mean? Because like it's
Right.
probably enough to be their main source of income, and what you get your free content from. Like
Right.
you get to skip, like if I haven't seen anybody complain about this, but if I saw somebody complain about this in the comments of like the podcast, like we do like literally 30 seconds of ad reads at the beginning of a podcast, and then you get 3 hours of content.
And you can skip it.
Yeah, you can skip it. So shut up. Like we don't even put ads on the podcast because there's literally no point, in my opinion. Which is actually my next question. When do you think people should begin to monetize their content generally? Like I guess if you have different points for different things, like when do you think somebody should make a Patreon? When do you think somebody should start putting Google ad words and shit on their video? When do you think people should join an MCN? Things like that. Because I think there's like different answers for different like for those different things. You know what I mean? Like I think
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
And I don't know that it even necessarily is a one-size-fits-all answer for each one. And my
Yeah, for
views
sure.
on this have certainly changed over the years. Because used to, I was just like, everyone should monetize forever. And then I got to that point. I was like, no, that's not how it should work. I think once you have, like, I currently like the changes YouTube have made. The problem with the new requirements is that they're always like 4 months behind on approving channels, which defeats the purpose.
Right.
But the core concept of you need to have basically enough to prove that you're going to stick with this. Like once you're committed to doing it for a long time, you've actually figured out what you're doing, because so many of the small channels, especially that are complaining about not making their $5 per month, that they're not actually getting paid out because it doesn't meet the threshold.
Yeah.
So many of them are just doing random videos that have no core connection, no core thing. Like they're just making it for fun. And I hate this phrasing, and I'm going to address that in a minute, but they're just making random stuff for fun. At that point, that's no different than like doodling in a notebook. You don't expect to get paid to show your parents or your friends your doodles in a notebook.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. But once you've shown that you're legit, you're not a spammy channel, and you're going to commit to it, and you've figured out what you're doing and starting to earn viewers for it, then naturally you should start being able to make money for it. And that's fine. And so conceptually, YouTube's current requirements for like raw advertisement monetization are fine for me, as long as they can actually develop a system to verify the channels quicker. In terms of a Patreon and stuff, there's no set, like it would be totally arbitrary to pick like a number, but in terms of, it should be basically when you feel like your viewers are wanting it. Like if they want a deeper connection with you, if they want more one-on-one time, if they want extra benefits that honestly cost you too much to make, or if they just flat out ask, hey, how can we support you? Or they're showing like a whole lot of support. Like if you have a basic PayPal donation or an affiliate link you've used, if they're showing like a lot of support for that, you can kind of redirect that over to Patreon in a way that benefits everyone better.
Yeah. That's a good point. Because see, like for the Secret Podcast, we made our Patreon, I think after making like, it was actually right. We announced it on the 10th episode. And that was like when we decided that we were going to take it seriously. Like I feel like that's pretty important thing. Like you can't, like for me, like I can't not show up for the podcast ever, because there's 70 people who give us money every month, amounting to nearly $500. And like, so nobody who is a part of this show is allowed to not show up on Monday night to be a part of this 3-hour thing. And if they did, there would be severe consequences, because like that, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like once this thing became a Patreon, even though like admittedly it took probably a month or two before we had like even like 3 to 5 patrons. Like as soon as that was made, that decision had to be made between the three of us, which is the hardest part. If you're, I feel like if your channel is a podcast, or you have some sort of connection with three, like, you know, more than you, like if more than you is important to making your content, like it's got to be set in stone that everyone here is down for the cause. You know what I mean? Like everyone's got to be there when they need to be there and
Right.
doing what they need to do, because you can't make a Patreon, have these people like sending you money every month for things, and then you not give them their things.
Right.
You
I
know?
think for the most part they need to be launched either alongside a kind of anticipated project or recommittal to a project where you're like, okay, we like in your example, we've done 10 episodes. We want to go, we want to be serious and keep this up where there's anticipation for it, because essentially an ideal Patreon launch needs to have a few people at least, signing up day one,
Yeah.
because the whole point is to show like a renewed commitment for it and stuff. And this is something I've failed at and struggled with when I first launched a Patreon a few times. And there's nothing honestly like kind of sadder than seeing someone have a Patreon and all of these benefits that they're supposedly supposed to do, but no one's pledged and it's been up for a while and things like that. And while it's just kind of, it may be disappointing to the creator, that deters people from actually pledging, because they're like, okay, you're supposed to do all these group calls and all that. You're promising all these things that clearly no one is participating in. Why would I pledge when there's no community to be a part of? So you need to have a kind of set community, or either tailor your pledges to where that's not a requirement and there's other reasons to join until you have a community to go with, because otherwise literally a lack of patrons will prevent you from getting patrons.
Yeah, it's great. Like we've talked about this on the podcast for like, just because it's funny now, but like when we first launched our Patreon, and nobody Patreoned for like the first week, me and one of the other hosts, like we were like, all right, well, which one of us is making a second Patreon account and pretending to be a Patreon? Because like this is fucking embarrassing. Like we were terribly embarrassed, and then thankfully, like almost like within like the first month, I think like our first 3 Patreons or something were $10 patrons, which is our talk to us on Discord tier. And and even like up until very recently, like our most pledged to tier was the $10 tier, which is the most expensive tier, I guess, on our Patreon, other than like the $100 tier, which is really meant to be a joke, but for whatever reason we've had people do that. And then like we've also, like, one of the things I wanted to do, to your point, I feel like to a degree, is like I saw that we had all of our patrons were either $10 patrons or $1 patrons, and $1 patrons get to watch the show like 4 days early, and $10 patrons get to talk to us on Discord. And so our $3 patrons were supposed to be getting the Skype, or I'm sorry, they're supposed to be getting commentary tracks, and our $5 patrons were supposed to be getting the Even More Secret podcast. But the Even More Secret podcast at that time was a monthly bonus episode, and the commentary tracks were sparse. So at the beginning of June, I said, all right, we need to recommit to this, and we're going to make commentary tracks every single week, even if like we're just going to make it an episode of some sort of TV show. So right now we're going through Planet Earth on Netflix. And like, we're like voiceovering it and shit. It's pretty funny. And then for the Even More Secret podcast, I said we need to make this weekly. Like there needs to be a bonus episode of this every week. And since then, we've jumped up to 30 patrons are now $5 patrons. And there's still only 7 on the commentary tracks, but I feel like a lot of them have jumped up to 5 because they get both, obviously.
Right.
So like thankfully it worked to our benefit, because I swear to God, I feel like before, and I could be wrong about this, but I think like it was like 60 people were $1 patrons like a month or 2 ago, and now it's like I brought a lot of them up with that idea. So like I don't know. This is a weird thing.
Yeah.
So when do you think people should invest in their content? For example, like buy good microphones or cameras and stuff.
It depends on why you're doing it. Like if you want this to be a business operation, if you want it to be something that you approach for like a career path, it should be day one. Now you shouldn't get rid of all your, you shouldn't spend all your money on the most expensive stuff. Like be efficient about it, be business smart about it.
Yeah.
But my honestly like least favorite thing to hear from someone is, I'll buy good equipment when I reach X subscribers. And it's like, you're not going to reach X subscribers if your video sounds like crap.
Yeah.
And
to that point though, I feel like one of the things that we always get is like, I'm not going to make content until I get this.
Right.
And like, that's even worse to me. Like, it's like, all right, like just like, here's the thing, sport. None of our content was good when we started. And like I had a Dazzle and a Rock Band microphone taped to a lamp. for a mic stand like that. You know what I mean? But and it's not even like the equipment I use for especially for YouTube now is very great. You know?
But there's a level that you can reach that's acceptable. That's fine.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is, you only get better by doing stuff. So the people who hold off on doing it right, quote unquote, until it can get more serious, like it's not going to get more serious until you're working on it. And
Yeah.
that's the whole thing, like I was mentioning before, with the channels that aren't like doing consistent content or that are still complaining about making money. Like you don't expect to just kind of show up at a job and hang out on random days when you feel like it and them still pay you. Like
Yeah.
you have to actually like be an employee.
Yeah, for sure. So you think like right off the bat they should probably like get decent camera or decent microphone and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with the philosophy that you should start, like, the whole you should start now thing. Like,
Yeah.
start with what you have. But if you have really, really bad stuff, be it putting extra hours in at work or selling off some old junk, if you can do that, like, do something to make a little bit of money, get you a $20 microphone that sounds better than what you have now, or whatever. Like phones are decent enough cameras, but the microphones suck. So if you get yourself like a decent enough microphone or something to start out so that people aren't going to be turned off by just how horrible it is.
Yeah.
That needs to be one of the first things you do if you want to be serious about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like the microphone I feel like is definitely more like people are willing to watch like grainy, ugly video, but like nobody's willing to get like their ears blown out by your shitty webcam mic or something, you know?
Right.
Like,
and like if you're in a position where you truly can't afford equipment or whatever, then you just kind of have to get creative about how you make stuff. Like if you can't do a tolerable microphone track, don't use it. Make some sort of creative music edits or something. Like so many viral videos don't have microphone audio and of the like how-to things or whatever, and that's fine.
yeah.
And most people, I think, limit themselves in their ability to come up with those ideas because they're too busy trying to make content that everyone else makes. And so they're like, well, everybody in this niche does this format and I can't do this format because I can't afford the gear. And it's like, okay, well, you're not going to make it making the exact same format anyway, so might as well do a twist on the format.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and if your computer sucks for rendering 4K video, then make 480p video and just make it look good. Like there's always creative approaches to it, and there's just excuses for things that don't need to be made excuses for.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any like equipment like that when you find out somebody got triggers you? Like for example, I for whatever reason, I don't know why it really shouldn't, but like every time I see somebody get a Blue Yeti, like I slam my head into the fucking wall hoping that finally this is the day it takes my life. Like I cannot stand it when somebody gets a Blue Yeti.
The Blue Yeti is definitely on the list. The Shure SM7B, despite the fact that it's an incredible microphone, so the Blue Yeti is a decent microphone used in the right situation, can sound pretty good. But
Sure.
the people who buy it based on it's a YouTube mic
Yeah.
don't know how to use it. And so they put it like all the way in the back of their desk behind their keyboard clacker next to their loud computer fans, and they start yelling into it. And they're like, why does it suck? It's $200.
Yeah.
And then there's people who develop an appreciation for decent audio, see so many recommendations for the Shure SM7B, which is a analog professional $400 dynamic microphone that requires specific preamp hardware in order to function. And so they hook it up to like a basic interface or mixer. It is as quiet as can be, and then they have to apply so much like processing to it to make it even like audible.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like crap. And they're like, well, this microphone sucks. It's too, and or either it has a very specific sound to it that's very like, it's like got a specific podcast sound,
Yeah.
and everyone will emulate the same sound with it. And so you'll have like 10 different people that all want to sound like Markiplier. And I'm just like, no, that's not,
Yeah.
it irks me.
I definitely feel that. Like I feel like the thing with me is like the Blue Yeti. It's like for example, here's like an actual anecdote from just very recently, like literally within like the last month. A guy who was friends with one of my friends who I'd play Fortnite with sometimes got on Discord one day and he said, just got myself some some audiophile equipment.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no big deal. And I was like, oh, what'd you get, man? And because I'm no audiophile.
Right.
But my friend Chris, one of the other hosts of the Seer podcast, he describes himself as one, and I take his opinions pretty seriously. You know what I mean? So he He's like, yeah, I just got like the ATH M50X. I think that's what they're called, right? Yeah, he got those fucking headphones, and he got the
God.
fucking Blue Yeti. And I was like, how much did you spend, man? And he says like 350. And I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
What? You spent 3 fucking 50? Like
You
could
could
have.
spend like $75 and get a better sounding microphone set up.
Yeah, like it's just.
And those headphones are so overrated. I forgot about those.
They're exactly. I was just like, dude, like let me divert your attention to a different fucking set of audio videos. Like there's, you know what I mean? Like it's like he literally looked up audio, and like the first thing that came up, or like the first 20 things that came up, were both saying get a Blue Yeti and a fucking Audio-Technica ATH M50X, and I was just like, Jesus Christ. And then I told him like, return that. You know, like I wasn't trying to be a dick or anything. Like, I was just like, return that, and I can help you pick something out that's better.
Right.
Because I fucking hate the sound of the Blue Yeti, especially like you said, for most people.
Yeah.
And so he got super defensive. He was like, what the fuck? Like, you know, like I just fucking got my audio file equipment. I was just like, dude, like, you know, I hate to break it to you, but like that shit sounds like trash. You know, like you would know that if you'd ever heard anything that sounded good. And then he'd use random people as like an example of them saying that his mic sounded fine. It's like, yeah, it sounds fine, but don't, like, it's not audio file level. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not
$350 worth.
Yeah, I'm not appreciating your sound right now. Like, it's just that shit sometimes irks me.
We're in an age when anyone can research any topic at the taps of their fingers, but they still would rather like go with what some random person, like, solo with no further research, just what some random person says works for them.
Yeah.
And then everyone needs like confirmation bias that they bought the right thing. Like they'll hear someone mention something, buy it, and then watch the reviews. And then if the reviews don't say positive things, they get pissed. They're like, no, I already bought this. It's freaking great. It's the best thing in the world. You suck. Just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's insane. But thank you, Epos. Thank you, Adam, for being on the show. Like the second guest, I honestly, like, I didn't expect you to be willing to be on, or I don't expect anyone to be willing to be on the show at this point, to be honest. But seriously, thank you for taking the time out.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think it was pretty fun. I feel like I got an idea of what your day's like and your thoughts and whatnot. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I had fun.
Yeah, thank you. This has been Talks Too Much, episode 3. No, hold on. 4, episode 4. Thank you. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, consider Patreoning at patreon.com/talkstoomuch. Link is in the description. And yeah, check it out. Also, check out EposVox's links. Is there anything you want to plug? Other than I'll have your links in the description, of course. But
just youtube.com/EposVox.
Check out EposVox, man. See, like, I genuinely, just real quick, I genuinely watch EposVox's content.
Wow.
Like, I appreciate your videos and like the quality and everything like that. Like, they're fucking good videos. So check out EposVox if you're considering anything when it comes to tech.
Like it.